How can people in Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranian regime hate Israel so much? Well, Mark Halawa grew up as a Palestinian refugee in Kuwait with the same bitter hostility until a shocking revelation. Could I really be Jewish? Well, Mark joins us from Jerusalem. Mark, help us understand this hatred.
Rajat, at an older age, after years of, first of all, not caring about politics or religion and any of that, because I grew up in a secular background, secular home. But I was always passively hearing everything because you cannot ignore it. Anti-Semitism was just a regular day. We didn't call it anti-Semitism, obviously. Today, as we see certain geopolitical moves and even see certain statements and acts by countries who are banning, for example, organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood that controls Hamas and controls the education system in certain countries, and banning them, like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia banned the Muslim Brotherhood and just trying to free themselves of that hatred and education. Then you see their alignment, which is an odd alignment. They're different sects, but they have one common goal, for example. Through Israel, and hating America and the Christian world and all, they unite the extremists and the brainless behind their cause. But their ultimate goal is not just the destruction of Israel. They want to take over the central Islamic centers of the world also, and they want to take over the world in general. That's their advertised goal. We want to liberate the world. We want to have a global caliphate and defeat the Jews and treacherous Christians. That's what he said.
And you used to believe this?
I mean, look, you go to school and you hear it in the street. You hear it on a sermon on TV, which you have no choice but to hear if your TV is on. They interrupt the cartoons that we're watching. We had an Arabic language teacher as children. So I grew up in Kuwait, secular Arab family with Palestinian background. Both of my parents were born in this land before it was called Palestine. It was not cool to call yourself a Palestinian because just yesterday you were part of the Ottoman Empire, and the imperialist powers, which that were fighting the Ottoman Empire and defeated it, took over the area and drew lines and just divided it and decided to call this area or the British Mandate of Palestine. So my grandfather, he was in the Ottoman army or the Turkish army as a jailer. His job was here in Jerusalem as a jailer, even though they're originally from Bisan or Bet She'an, up northern Israel. So one day he's going to take his uniform off and say, "Hey, I recognize the new state of British Mandate of Palestine. I'm a Palestinian." Yay? No, not at all. The majority of Palestinians refuse that. Some Arabs, very small number, and I know some of them, wealthy landowners, people with money, basically, wanted to fit in with a new power. The new power is the United Kingdom. It's a big deal. You're not going to oppose that. And then they went on with it. But whether those guys, one of my best friends, an Israeli guy that comes from a family that lived in Israel for many, many generations and had a Palestinian passport, that was rare. Just recently, somebody shared with me an article from recently written article about how Jordan, after Jordan was founded, which is in 46, have declared that every Palestinian, except of Jews, is automatically considered as a Jordanian citizen and welcome in Jordan.
But eventually, your family took on the identity as Palestinian. Eventually, and then it became Palestinian refugee. And then they moved to Kuwait, and then so you basically grew up totally in that culture and with that mindset of Israel and the Jewish people are the problem.
Sure. My mom was born in the late 50s here in Nablus in Shechem, and she was just considered 100% Palestinian. Her father, who worked for the Jordanian army, was from Nablus or Shechem, originally from Egypt. His last name is Al-Masri. My DNA test will show you I'm 41% Egyptian somehow. So it's just the whole thing is just names change and all. But people come over to you and say, "Hey, we have history of many thousands of years. Well, where's that history? Where's your currency?" This is something that people ask.
So you grew up as an Arab as a Palestinian refugee, as the son of Palestinian refugees, and so you grew up with this education, you grew up with this hatred, you understood where a lot of this came from. But then what happened?
So my father wasn't right away a Palestinian refugee. First, he became a Jordanian, a full citizen. Then in Kuwait, after he connected with Yasser Arafat and the formation of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and they created this organization that got recognition somehow, then we became refugees in the 60s. So 20 years later, after my father was born, he became a refugee. He was an engineer, and he was a successful engineer. There are famous celebrities in the United States of America that are absolutely considered refugees because their father, like this particular two ladies, I don't know if I could say this on TV, Bella and Gigi Hadid, their father was born in 1945, just like my father, and went up to Lebanon. He didn't go to Jordan or Syria, but Lebanon. And these countries are where Palestinian refugees were recorded and registered. So suddenly we become Palestinian refugees, and my father was involved actually with this PLO organization for some time until he discovered this is a piggy bank for this gentleman called, not really a gentleman, Arafat. He's a terrorist, forever he is, and distanced himself from this organization. But we were fortunate not to be involved with the, how could I say, with this organization for a longer period of time. There are two branches of extremes. There's some secular and there's some religious based. The religious based are Muslim Brotherhood based. Okay, and slowly that kind of went under the Muslim Brotherhood wing. For example, the son of Hamas, the Green Prince, will tell you these stories. People like that, there are people like that, just families, entire families are like that. And those people, they don't just live in Ramallah or in Gaza. Some live in Jordan, some live in different countries in Europe or even the Gulf states. To answer about the hatred of Jews, I mean, I hated Jews, maybe not 100%, maybe 95% or 98%. I knew that my grandmother was Jewish before she married my grandfather, which kind of every now and then when we sit with them and look through their pictures, kids have, a little bit of a different type of memory. When we're there, I think about it, I'm like, whoa, my grandma became Muslim and she was from a different religion. Cool. I look at her pictures and all, but then you move on with your life. I go with my grandfather to the mosque and I hear every single word of supplication and prayers against the Jews. May Allah destroy the Jews. May Allah destroy the Christians. May Allah destroy America, and all these prayers. And you sit down, and all the men are saying Amen with a big voice, and you're just shaking like, oh yeah, Amen. I'm a big boy like them, And then you go home again to my grandparents' home, and I look at my grandma. I'm like, holy, was this woman, descendant of pigs and monkeys like they taught us? Like, she looks like a beautiful, lovely lady that makes this delicious food and such a loving person. And so you have these questions, but we didn't have Twitter and the internet and YouTube, and we didn't have the ability to question. What you're told is what you're told. Raj, I love to mention this to some of my friends, and when I travel and speak, we had an Arabic language teacher of a Syrian background, very religious guy. And I don't know what was going on in the news those days, but he pulled the map of the Middle East in front of the blackboard and said, look where the Americans and the British planted the Jews, right in the heart of the caliphate, right in between Asia and Africa, in order to separate this caliphate and destroy any component of unity, and they will never be able to unite again. Now, me being a child, I don't know how old I was. I lived in Kuwait until I was 13. Let's say 9, 10, 11. I'm looking at this map. I see Asia. I see Africa. Yeah, you can't go in between them because Israel are in the middle. So in my mind, it made sense. And you go on. And you hear another snippet here and snippet there. And you build your own truth. There are people who believe in, I don't know, aliens. So it's just, there's various things out there that you hear. But how could I say this? Kuwait's educational system back in the day, Kuwait's a great country. I love Kuwait so much. I've always done very well, and I have friends still this very day from Kuwait. But back in the day, Kuwait's educational system was controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. So they close it up on you. You hear it everywhere. My math teacher would walk in often and say, okay, if one rocket or one bomb would kill 5 Jews, how many Jews can he kill with 7 rockets?
Wow.
Now, I'm good with math. I always wanted to stick my hand and give an answer. Did I get shocked and say, oh my gosh, what did she just say about a different, sizable minority of the world? No, I did not.
Wow.
Because this was just life. you're welcome, or you're any of your listeners to ask their Middle Eastern friends. Ask your friends who live in the Middle East. People say these things, or used to say these things back in the day. I mean, now people probably would not say that living in the United States, and I myself living in Israel. Now, what I did not know is the connection through my grandmother. It's a far connection that would make me a Jew one day. Now, this turned things upside down. So sometimes in the middle of war, or in the middle of peace, or in the middle of the shuk, which is the market here, and I walk around and look at people, sometimes I pinch myself like, oh my gosh, I grew up hating these people. And I see this the sweetest interactions day and night between, regular people, regular, just human beings, good human beings. A lot of times, like when you go to the market, people are just shopping. That's what's on their mind. Their children are with them. They're getting food. They're making jokes. They're bargaining. And I always notice, like, especially women, they talk and they smile at each other and they get along together. I couldn't imagine that back in the day. I thought it's just the wild, wild west over here. They were hunting, Muslims. They want to destroy Islam, like they told us. And we have to defend Islam and all. Now, as a child, they tell you in class, and I'm talking about religion class, that you have to defend Islam, and there's three ways of jihad. By the sword, as in you go and fight, and by money, as in you support the jihadis. This is a big deal. And the third one, if you can't support by the sword or with money, you support them by your heart, as in you pray for them, you wish them well, you do PR, you go on demonstrations. So we grew up with this, and they always ask you, they leave you with this open question. What kind of jihad? Ask yourself, what kind of jihad are you willing to do? A lot of
Wow.
people look at you too. If you're a Palestinian background, they look at you. I'm like, oh, hey, is this guy going to become? What am I going to be? Well, what's Raj going to be? These are the so.
So, so wow, that's very, very insightful, Mark. But I know it's a long story. You and I have talked about the process by which you came to realize that your identity was a lot more confusing than you realized. So I know that could be a whole nother discussion, but I want to flip it and let's get right to it. So when you finally accepted that, as you were talking about, your grandmother was Jewish, right? Your grandmother,
Grandma.
your grandmother was Jewish, and you had this person come into your life that basically said, "Hey, that makes you a Jew." What was that moment like?
First of all, I didn't believe him. I thought he's trying to convert me. But then the gentleman had a smile on his face the whole time, and he was just answering my questions with such ease. Like, yes, you're actually, if your grandmother, as you claim, is Jewish, that makes your mom and her siblings Jews, and you and your siblings Jews. So I said, what about my grandfather? He's Muslim. I mean, he's also in the picture. He's like, well, according to Muslim law, sure. But according to us, matrilineal law dictates that you're Jewish and your siblings are Jewish. Oh my gosh, is this guy truthful or not? I didn't believe him until I got back to my house, my student house when I was younger, and I went and Googled. Yeah, there was something called matrilineal descent. So that kind of opened a kind of Pandora box. And I called my grandmother, I called my mom, and there are stories popping up. I was like, wow, one second here. Now, do I change my reality today? I mean, I didn't really connect myself or identify at a certain religion. It made me question who I am. Like, I grew up with a lot of hate. I had to represent. I went to Boy Scouts, Palestinian Boy Scouts. Okay, at some points I would hold the Palestinian flag. If you hold the Palestinian flag, like the big flag, and people march behind you, the little boys, it's just, we're kids. It's like a big deal. So, I always try and ask my dad to hook me up and all. And I just walk in, and they give you a poetry list of, you choose poetry that you're comfortable with reciting in front of all these people that you fundraise from, or they fundraise from, the PLO. And I used to stand in front of the mirror and practice it to a degree that you believe it. You cry, and I say it in front of people. I suffer, and they rape my land, and they do this to my family. But in reality, it's all metaphorical. It's not reality. And you build this hatred that is supported by everywhere you see. And you become a hero, and a lot of people pat you on the back, and it's just great. You feel great, and you do it again and again and again. But then I come here, I was sitting down with a soldier friend of mine. I took him out for dinner. He just came out of war, and I love this man. He's a good friend of mine. He knows who I am. We're just such good friends. And next to us was a Jerusalemite Arabic family, and they were sitting in the same restaurant. And even the ex-minister of defense walked in. Like, it was just a big soup, and it was just like life here. And nobody cares what your religion or background, what language you're using, as long as you're peaceful and you're not threatening anybody's life. So I come here to discover that my people live with my people, my other people, in absolute peace, and everybody's having fun. And you want to go to school and get a degree or become a judge or a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist, go straight ahead. You could reach the heights of life, and you earn much better money than other your counterparts in different countries next door that are still chanting, hatred. It's just a weird reality.
Weird reality, crazy story. Mark, in closing, as someone who has lived and experienced and been educated and breathed and knew this hatred firsthand from your family, from your educators, from the TV, to then one day realizing that you're Jewish. Now you live in Jerusalem, in Israel. You're an Israeli activist. It's just a crazy story. What would, let's say someone's watching this that has a similar background to you, or they're just, in the States, whatever, and they hate Israel for whatever reason. What would your message to them be?
I tell them, first of all, I love you as a human being, and I invite you to come over and visit by yourself. I don't want to see you. I don't want to take you to special places. Come, go anywhere you want to. Speak to anybody. Just be yourself. There might be some people who experience, let's say, difficulties in their life through whatever, but they're treated equally by the law. You go to the market where people show their true face. They're just hustling, working, selling, buying, and you see how they're living. They have every chance of survival in life, like me, like you, like all our neighbors. Come by yourself, or come for yourself and visit. Check out the place and decide for yourself. You're welcome to go to Ramallah or Jerusalem, where I am right now, or Tel Aviv, and see Arabs and Jews. Go to restaurants and different people, and you see just everybody's living with everybody. Such a small country, unbelievable. And I was shocked. I thought it was apartheid, and because of all the hatred that I grew up with, I kind of justified it in my head. I never questioned that. I thought it was an apartheid country, but I came here and I was like, "Holy, it's a party happening! It's just a party happening."
Wow, wow, well, what just a crazy story, Mark. You are so unique in your perspective, being able to. I mean, you grew up. Your native language is Arabic. You grew up in Kuwait. What an amazing testimony, an amazing life experience. Mark Halawa, Toda Waba. It's good seeing you as always, my friend.
Thank you so much, Raj. I appreciate this. Peace.